Hey Sunrise team, it's Giancarlo. Had a conversation with Congressman Maxwell Alejandro talking about the issues that we care about here in Sunrise, Orlando. Excited for y'all to tune in. We have really good conversations about transportation, the STAR plan, about AI, about corporate money in politics, and about Israel and Palestine and his stance on it. We also talk about housing and a bunch of other issues. So I think you guys are really gonna like the video. Please let people know your thoughts in the Slack chat. We'll kind of go from there, but I hope y'all enjoy. Yeah, Maxwell, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Sunrise. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, so just wanted to ask you some questions just so that folks have a better idea of who you are, and specifically on issues like transportation, AI, and so much more. So I guess first, I know that you're in the transportation committee now in Congress. We'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about that and give people an idea of how that is, how that works.
So I'm on the Surface Transportation Committee, or Transportation Infrastructure Committee. A lot of the work I'm focusing on has to do with mass public transit, walkability, urbanism, making sure that we change infrastructure to help incentivize more housing. And then also with an eye looking at funding sources as well. Part of the problem that we have is, we have this unofficial breakdown of money, any federal money going towards transportation, which is about 80% towards roads and highways and 20% towards mass public transit, which obviously is a huge problem and a failure. And so a lot of what we try to do is be a good, forward-looking progressive voice on the committee and trying our best to move everybody, both Democrats on the committee and Republicans on the committee, to diversify the funding a lot more so we have more resources for mass public transit and different things like that. We did just move forward the surface transportation reauthorization. That I think it's a pretty status quo version of it. But obviously in the minority, our biggest thing was fighting to make sure it doesn't take us backwards. They wanted to make it even worse, actually, and make it 90-10 split. And so I think we'll retain where we're at right now, but obviously, we need to look at doing better on the transportation front.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's awesome that we have, you there representing Central Florida there. I think in the past, John Micah, who used to be a congressman.
Yeah, Micah was on it. Yeah, and Corrine Brown.
Yeah, and through there, they actually were able to bring a lot of money here. For them, I think it was the I-4, but there's a lot of potential for you to possibly bring money to the community for, transportation.
Yeah, it's usually I-4 money. I'm not really interested in that. So we're, trying to focus more on resources for Sunshine Corridor, for trains, expanding busing, different things like that.
Yes, that's excellent. Because, I think, to kind of give people the air. So in Sunrise, we're fighting for the STAR plan, which is the county commission initiative. And so obviously that's the county commission's role. But, if all goes well, we end up passing it, the county commission implements it. It would then kind of be almost your role later to get the federal funds down. Kind of like what you're doing with Sunshine Corridor right now.
100%. Yeah. And we're really excited about the STAR plan. And hopefully it's adopted and there's a lot of opportunity. Our whole region's going to change a lot. We're going to have 2 new mayors. We're going to have a county commission with a lot of new people, and we're going to have a city council with a lot of new people. So we're going to be really involved in those races because we do year-round organizing work. But a big reason why is because I can bring, my job, I don't implement anything, right? I bring down money, and then I vote on behalf of our people, right? And that's my job. So I have a vested interest in making sure that there's people with shared values who actually implement the money that I bring down. They can bring money down all day, but the people who actually take it and use it are the county and the city and and are some of the smaller municipalities and stuff like that.
Yeah, hopefully we'll help make your life a little bit easier with who's on that county and local level so that y'all can work in tandem. And I think, like you said, a lot of change happening in Orlando. I thought it was funny on your Instagram story. You're saying there's a crisis. People are moving to Brooklyn from Orlando, and I'm that's true. A lot of
it is true. Yeah, a lot of young people, just a lot of my friends and people I know in my life. And then I made that post as a joke, and I learned 10 more people who were leaving, who were responding, oh, by the way. So it is. And I'm joking, but there's a lot of, there's truth behind the whole thing that people are seeking walkability. People are seeking, it's not that housing is cheaper in New York. Obviously, things are still really expensive in New York. But the thing I tell people is the conditions are set in the way the city's engineered and how close you are to other people, that there's still a struggle to survive. There's a cost of living crisis everywhere, but it's easier to find people to struggle with. When you have more walkability, and it's easier to find like roommates, and it's easier to find other situations, and then you don't have to worry about having a car, and like all those kind of things make it where it's like, it's not that it's cheaper in New York City by any means, but it's like it's set so you can get through it in an easier way, and maybe have more fun and stuff. So that, I get why people are moving, but we just got to do better here.
It can be easier to build community. I feel like here in Orlando we're a bit atomized. Takes 30 minutes to get anywhere. But that's good to know that, taking steps to hopefully change that. And hopefully one day someone in Brooklyn will be like, oh my God, all my friends are moving to Orlando.
Yes. That's what's going to happen.
That's the goal. But okay, excellent. So it was super exciting, like your support of the STAR plan, read the questionnaire, which was excellent. And I think, some of the corridors of the corridors in STAR we're advocating for, you mentioned, were Silver Star, which is currently the Lynx bus route 125. And then I believe the other one was Cimarron, which is like the one that connects to the airport on, Cimarron Road. So I'm just like curious, just want to get more of your thoughts on the STAR plan, why those two kind of like give you the chance to expand.
I mean, I think part of the reason why the two corridors are so important is because it moves workers and people from where they live to where they work, which is, one of the top priorities. Of course, we want it for leisure and people to just go around for whatever reason, for tourists, for all that. But at the end of the day, like if we're able to move people from point A to point B who will use it consistently every day, that's part of what helps us build a basis for the transportation system that keeps it self-sustainable, right? And which is a really big thing politically, to be able to prove like, hey, this is needed. People are using it, but it's just important. So I think that's really important. Another one, though, a corridor that we really have to work on has to do with east to west. And cutting across the city, which is something I hear about all the time. And I think like if we're able to finish with Sunshine Corridor, which will obviously force Sunrail to operate a lot more and on weekends and a lot more often, the hope is that we can fill that gap with additional busing, whether it's rapid bus transit or new routes or different things like that. But the part of the problem is Lynx doesn't have any money, and the buses are insanely expensive, like $1 million for a bus, and then on top of that, like obviously the routes are expensive. And I remember when I first came in, I was like, I'm going to bring back a bunch of federal money so we can get some new buses. And then I learned how expensive the buses are. So I actually have a bill to help us bring down the cost of busing and to look into that, the Bus Affordability Act. This goes to like a bigger problem of corporate greed and monopolies, that there's pretty much monopolies on bus manufacturing, and it's part of the reason why buses are really expensive right now. But either way, I think those are two really important corridors. But also that east-west is like so important, especially as people are getting priced out and they're having to move further away. We have to think about how do we bring folks back into the city.
No, I love that, the focus on, jobs and working opportunities, because I feel like these corridors have a lot of potential there. I think, the East-West, actually, when we do our town halls, we've only done 2. We plan on doing more in the summer, but a lot of people get really excited about Colonial and, connecting UCF, downtown and Pine Hills and Ocoee. So, a lot of potential there.
And they're growing, Ocoee and Apopka are some of the fastest growing areas. And it's because there's people moving away from, central Orlando because it's too expensive. So the question is are we just saying bye to all these people, or are we trying to keep everyone connected?
It's tragic. Actually, my parents, it happened to them. We grew up in Orange County, from Alafaya, that's where I grew up, and because things got too expensive, they moved to Volusia. And so kind of a lot of people. So it really sucks. So hoping to get some change on that. Accordingly. Okay, I think we touched a lot on STAR and transportation. I'm curious, I guess, I know there's a lot of initiatives that you're working on. I know you had a video talking about transit. I just want to leave it all out there. Is there anything else on transportation that you'd want to talk about or touch on?
I think we hit on everything. I mean, I think that I have another bill, Faster Buses, Better Future Act, and this is based on essentially the fact that there's been a lot of cities that have been able to up their busing by redoing their networks. And what a lot of people don't realize, that of course you guys probably know, is most cities have like networks that are like 20, 30, 40 years old. And actually, it's really expensive to redo it. And a lot of the local transit authorities don't have any money to begin with.
Yeah.
And so this creates a federal grant program where we essentially pay for them to redo their busing if they can prove that the new network is going to serve more people and get people where they need to go faster. So, you know, to get to one place, you don't have to, it doesn't take you 3 hours and 3 transfers or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's really excellent, because I think, you know, the current links lines, I feel like they're not as optimized as they could be, or like, and I think, you know, the interesting in Miami-Dade, I don't know if you're familiar with like Miami Transit Alliance, but they were able to kind of like change the entire like bus structure through their better bus network thing. And so we're thinking like after the STAR plan like passes, like there's kind of going to be a reevaluation like with like links and other stakeholders of like, okay, how should we optimize these routes? So I think it really kind of works all together, what you're saying, where it's like,
exactly.
you know, being able to optimize these routes. So, okay, so moving from transportation, I think we had our candidate forum, and a lot of people asked questions about AI data centers. I know like some are starting to pop up in Florida, and so I guess just would love to hear like, I mean, what's your opinion on AI data centers and all this stuff going on?
I mean, obviously the data centers are a huge number one issue for our environment, our local environment, the climate crisis. They don't really bring a lot of jobs, although people say they do. They really don't. And the jobs that they do bring are usually short term. I think the data centers are a good place to focus in terms of ones that are already existing, making sure that the companies are paying for the energy and it's not being put back on the consumers. But I think part of the problem here, though, is the data centers are a good place to focus, but it's not going to solve the problem. I mean, we have a problem in which like AI has not been regulated at all, and so we need kind of broader, what I would say is common sense AI regulation. And part of the issue is the companies don't want this. And what's going to happen is there's going to be some sort of emergency that happens in terms of either our data or its uses in warfare and the killing of a lot of people, or its uses in something, right? It's like something's going to happen, and the public is going to say, okay, we need to do something. And the thing we're going to have to do is going to have to be really radical, because we didn't take more common sense steps when it was being built. And then because it's more radical, it's going to have more opposition from the companies. And this is actually exactly what's happened with social media. Like when social media came up decades ago, Congress didn't really do anything. In many ways made it worse. Now we're in an emergency where like parents are worried about their kids being safe online. We're all worried about our data being used against us. Billionaire oligarchs have purchased all the social media and are feeding all this bullshit to us, and everyone's concerned about it. And then Congress is like, I have an idea, let's ban TikTok. And like, it's like, what is that? Like, that's not going to do anything. And now we have a real serious problem. And like, if they would have taken more common sense measures like 30 years ago, we actually probably wouldn't be in this situation, because our data would have been protected. So I think about this with AI, but the problem with AI that's different than automation and even social media is it's gonna be cheaper to implement for companies and corporations, and it's going to be faster to implement, which means it's going to be easier to take away people's jobs. So I'd like to see us pass like a comprehensive AI package that has to do with regulating uses, but also making sure that we're protecting workers with the different regulations and things like that. I actually believe if we can't move that right now for whatever reason, Congress doesn't know anything about technology, I think we should really pass legislation on making sure that we're protecting creatives in this space.
True.
And the reason why is this: a lot of people are like, Maxwell, why would you want to tackle that first? Well, in many ways, a lot of the questions we have to answer in terms of technology are very like moral questions and like deep things we have to sort out as like a society, and like, what is work? What is the value of work? Like all this stuff. And in many ways, the impact of AI on the creatives and the creative economy are the hardest questions to answer. And if we're able to answer those, I think it's going to help us answer all the other questions. And so I would like to see us like challenge ourselves to like figure that out. And then I think that's going to help us figure out how we protect workers in all industries. If we can figure out how do you protect a songwriter, you know what I mean, from their job being displaced because of AI. So that's where I'm at. And obviously they view this as an existential thing, because they're spending, you know, tens of millions of dollars in congressional races and in races across the country.
Yeah, the AI lobby, they're out here.
Yeah, they're huge. I mean, they have a lot of money, you know, and so it's a huge existential threat. And I think like people see that. Like, I think, there's not a lot of candidates out there saying, let's build more data centers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good politics, and that's why they're spending so much money on it.
Yeah, and I think I like the point you said about, like, creatives and artists. I know in Sunrise we have a lot of folks who, like, do art, and, like, that's what helps us, like, organize and helps bring people in. So, like, that's awesome that, you have a focus in that way, because, like, I talk to them, like, people, and they, like, tell me, like, the more struggles that they face, which I feel like is kind of very unique compared to, I feel like they're kind of on the front lines, I would argue. Okay, excellent. No, thank you for that on AI. Also, this reminded me, I don't know if you remember that one, like, video of the guy, like, in Congress being like, what's a Finsta to, like, the Facebook person.
That was a couple years ago. That's literally what it is. Like, most people in Congress don't understand any kind of technology. So they don't legislate on it. And the problem, though, is then when a bill comes up, it's usually just written by the industry.
Because I think in that case, he was trying to, like, I think it was, like, Facebook or Instagram. He was like, you need to ban Finstas. And then the Instagram person was like, I don't think you know what a Finsta is because we don't make that. Like,
exactly.
It's like,
I think it was Mark Zuckerberg that was in front of him. And, like, a lot of people retweeting the video being like, oh my god, this congressperson is an idiot. And it's like, we're in a bad situation if you're seeing a congressperson and Mark Zuckerberg and you're like, you're vibing with Mark Zuckerberg. You know what I mean? Right? Because the congressperson was stupid.
Like, it ties into, like, I feel like social media, AI, like, there's a lot of connection there, 100%.
There is. And but the scary part is that AI is it's working faster. I actually met in a closed-door group. It was like an anonymous thing with 10 people who work at the top AI companies.
Oh, wow.
Like OpenAI, Palantir. No, not Palantir. OpenAI, what is it? Anthropic, Meta, and some of the other places. And these are like mid-tier people. They're all like researchers, scientists, but they're very progressive, and they wanted to kind of be whistleblowers. And part of what part of what they told us is the scariest part of it to them is when they walk into work, they have zero idea of what it's going to be capable of at the end of their workday.
Wow.
So it's not like day to day or month to month or year to year. It's like hour to hour. And these are people who are creating it. It's insane. I think there was even a More Perfect Union video of like that there's some workers who they work in AI and it's like unrestricted. Like it's like, like it's like violence, it's like pornographic stuff that they have to like test it out basically. And it's like kind of scary. There's no regulation, right? So no, definitely. Okay, so I think for I guess the last questions I have are in regards to I have two more questions, and then I'll pass over to you, Destin, and then you can take it away. So my next question, so of course, like, for a lot of people, young people in Sunrise, like corporate money is like a big like issue, right? A lot of politicians, they take money from big corporations, and then it's like, oh, like, how come they're not fighting for healthcare? And it's because they take money from, big pharma or whoever it may be. So just kind of wanted you to talk a little about like, what is your stance on money in politics? Why do you have your stance? And just kind of like talking about it. Well, I don't take any corporate PAC money. I never have. I never received any. So there's that. I think we need to move a huge campaign finance package that includes a lot of different things. One is banning Citizens United. Super PAC shouldn't exist. There's some laws to do that without having to do a constitutional amendment. Summerlee's introduced one that I think is a really good way, which essentially makes it so that way super PACs can exist, but there's a cap on how much you can donate, which would be the same cap on what you can donate to like a candidate. That would essentially end a super PAC because you can't donate, $1 million or whatever. My North Star is like publicly funded elections.
Yes.
I think we're further away from that than banning the super PACs, but I still think we should be moving towards it. And you see that, like, when you have publicly funded elections, or at least some sort of reimbursement system or match system, you get more working class candidates who can run. And this is part of the reason why, if you look at a place like New York City, you see a lot more like working class people able to rise through the ranks. And a big reason for that is, and a lot of people don't know, they have a matching publicly funded election system, right? If you meet it, half of your money will come from the city, right? And that's how Zoran was able to, he raised a ton of money and then got it matched. And good people in the city council like Chiose and people like that get a match. So it makes it so that way working class candidates have a shot at doing the thing without having to turn to corporate PAC money or anything like that. So I think that's really important. Actually, there's a lot we need to do in terms of AI in elections as well, and deep fakes, and that's like something I'm sure I'm really concerned about, and robocalls and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, look, I don't think corporations should be able to donate money to political candidates. And I don't think, like, a billionaire should be able to spend money. I mean, I don't know if you remember last year when Elon Musk was, like, tweeting about me all the time. But one of the things he tweeted was, I'm going to spend $20 million to unseat you in your primary. And although it's like, that's crazy, that's perfectly legal in our system.
Yeah,
he could make a super PAC and put $20 million in it and flood my home where I was born and raised with a bunch of ads, you know, lying about me or whatever. Like, it's a 100% legal thing he could do. So I just think we need to ban super PACs. But yeah, I don't take any corporate PAC money.
That's excellent. No, thank you, Maxwell. That was really, I like that. Like, you covered a lot through that, and I think that, you know, will be helpful for people to have a idea of, like, your comprehensive idea. That's cool that Summer Lee is passing that policy as well, because I know she got hit really hard by, like, AIPAC and all these people. Like, she kind of, like, I think, like, they spent a lot of money on her.
Yeah, in her first race, they spent, like, millions of dollars against her.
It's insane. But it's cool to know people can beat the money and that there's, you know, possibility to change it. So, the last question I have maybe have more, I don't know how the time is, but I'll leave past the lesson after, is, so in regards to Palestine. So I think, you know, when it comes to the issue of, you know, genocide in Gaza, Palestine, I think that, you know, a lot has happened, like, since, like, you first ran to, like, now. I think that there's been, I don't know, I feel like, basically, I think some people think things about, like, your stance, and, like, I feel like some people don't know things about your stance, and so I think I kind of want to give you the chance to kind of, like, talk about your stance on Palestine. How has it, like, developed over time? And especially, you know, in this moment now where, you know, we really do, I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that, like, Israel and the Israeli government, AIPAC and all that, really, you know, of course, it's horrendous, the horrors of you know, Gaza and the genocide, but it also kind of affects, like, our money going to them instead of helping us. So kind of, I mean, I'll just talk about my stance now, and then, you know, if you guys have any questions. I mean, number one, yes, it was a genocide happened in Gaza, right? I signed into a bill that says that. Number two, we should not be sending any military aid or taxpayer money to Israel for many different reasons. Number one, of course, committing a genocide. But number two, looking at the fact that this is a state that is able to provide its people with universal health care, with all these different great social services. And you could say, I agree that countries, you know, should be able to, you know, shoot bombs out of the air and different things like that when you talk about Iron Dome. But the real question is, should our taxpayer money be going towards it, right? Of course, I'm in favor of all countries being able to make sure that innocent people are dying. But should taxpayer money be going to this, especially after they just committed a genocide and the people who did that are still in charge? No, the answer is no, right? And so I've never voted the whole time I've been in Congress to send any weapons to Israel. And I'm going to continue that stance because not just the same people are in charge, but that sentiment is still there, right? The other thing is the West Bank, which I think is really important. Of course, there's a huge right-wing movement there to essentially terrorize, kill, and take over land from Palestinians for one sole purpose, and that's to make sure that there is no hope of making sure that there's a state of Palestine, because it's Swiss cheese, essentially. Which is the whole point of that movement. And, you know, it really hit close to home when we had, number one, a U.S. citizen who was beaten to death, and his cousin was taken, Muhammad, and put in an Israeli prison for like 9 months. So we worked with a bunch of people, and we were able to get him out. Not me alone. I was one of a ton of people. His family really pushed a lot heavily. But I think it's just indicative of a bigger problem that we have. So I think the United States has to do everything it can to make sure that we end the occupation and that oppression ends. And for us, our biggest thing that we can do right now is our resources. And our clout with that country, because we've given so much money and taxpayer money. And the last thing is, Netanyahu came out himself and said, we want to wane off of U.S. military assistance. I mean, he came out and said it himself. So for people here who think that position is crazy, I sometimes even point back to him and say he's the one that... Now, he came out and said it more in a defiant way, you know, because of the politics in the U.S. changing around the issue. But he came out and said it himself. So, I mean, I just think... I just think it's time that we do that. You know, things have changed a lot. Especially given what happened. So that's where I'm at. In terms of AIPAC, they never endorsed me. I don't take any AIPAC money. And
I think what they've done in a lot of elections should be illegal.
Yes.
Obviously, I want to get rid of super PACs, but it's disgusting. You know, I mean, it's some of the most racist advertisements we've seen. AIPAC, it wasn't a huge number, but I don't know if you know this, but they ran negative ads against me. Was it last year?
Like less than 6 months ago.
Less than 6 months ago. For one of the votes I took, I forget what vote it was. But either way, so I just think that, you know, yeah, I don't think anymore.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Maxwell, because it definitely, I think that response was very, like, you know, the Swiss cheese analogy, like, it seems like, you know, you're very taking the time to know what's going on and what happened, and I appreciate it a lot. I think, I guess kind of on top of that, I guess the first question I'll ask, because I feel like, you know, I hear people talking about you and, like, Palestine, and I think that some people have an idea of your position, and so I guess, what do you think are people's biggest misconception of your stance on, like, Palestine and Gaza?
I think some people think I take AIPAC money or that I'm an AIPAC candidate, which I'm not. I think some people think that I've voted many times to send bombs to Israel, which I have not. And, like, I encourage, you know, people can look it up and stuff. I know there's been some controversy around this kind of stuff from the first, you know, the end of my campaign and the kind of beginning of my tenure. I wouldn't say my position's really changed as far as, like, human rights for people around the world, but I just think the conditions and things have shifted in a big way. And so, you know, there was an article that came out that said Maxwell has shifted on this, and I don't really see it that way, but others can. But, you know, my position's what it is, and I always encourage people to look at my voting record. Do I disagree? I don't believe in violence, you know, regardless of what it is or where it comes from.
I see. Okay. No, that's helpful, and I'm glad that you're able to clear that up. And I guess, because I know when, like, an article, I remember when you first ran, it was like there's like a position paper that you're like, I'm pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. So I guess, like, are you saying that, like, your stances has changed, but you agree with human rights? Like, I guess, like, would you use that wording again? Would you say, like, I guess, like, what would you?
I would just say I'm for human rights all over the world, you know, and I know, like, some of those words have certain connotations. I just try to stay away from things that mean one thing to some people and a completely different thing to other people as much as I can, just so people understand, like, where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So I would just say I'm for, like, human rights around the world, and I'm for the United States doing everything we can to make sure that's the case.
Okay.
And so,
okay.
And that happens to be our, like, the way we fund countries and different things like that. Okay.
So I guess you would, like, kind of, like, go away from, like, labeling yourself like, oh, I'm pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. It's more so like, I'm about human rights.
Yeah, I want everyone to be safe. You know, I want everyone to live. And the fact of the matter is, there's power dynamics in certain situations, and we know that. Of course, I want Israelis to be safe. I want Palestinians to be safe. But at the end of the day, like, we know it's Palestinians who don't have a state of their own, who don't have, who just went through this. And there's a power imbalance there.
Exactly.
Which makes it not fair, and which is why I would label it as oppression. So, that's what I would say. Yeah, it's like,
genocide makes no one safe. Apartheid makes no one safe. And it's like, I mean, I always think to South Africa, where it's like, once, apartheid ended there, then could come the moment of, like, coming together of the different groups and building something better. So
a lot of it has to do with power, and just, like, people using situations to gain power. I mean, I think a lot about the fact that there's credible, we know that Netanyahu himself has put money from Israel to help support Hamas.
Yeah,
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the
literally.
reason why is because for him, being, like, someone on the far right, it's good for him to have that kind of conflict, because it helps him rally the far right to get more money, be more brutal, and and I think it helps him muddy the waters too, because the group before was secular and bringing everybody in Palestine together, like Christians, Muslims, Jewish people. But then by funding Hamas, which is like more Muslim, more extremist, like, then it's like muddying, because, like, oh, it's about radical Islam, it's about Islam, and the problem with that, when that's not that's not it's a religious war. It's not for everyone. It's like, no, this is about power and land and people,
which is super unfair. And then it even hurts, like, Muslim people here in America who then get painted seen it as like, terrorists, extremists, when that's not true. They're our neighbors, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. So the last question. Sorry, this is the last question I have.
It's an important topic.
Yeah, I appreciate Max. I appreciate your answer. So I know you were talking about like, so you're not willing to, not giving funding to Israel for like weapons and stuff like that. And so I know like kind of like online there has been that debate of like offensive, defensive weapons and stuff like that. And so I guess like when you say that you don't give money, like, or you're not planning, I mean, I guess there's a difference between back then and now, but I guess like would you be able to kind of like clear like, do you have a distinction between offensive and defensive, or it's kind of all like the same?
I think like technically that distinction does exist, right? And like in the past when I voted against it, I've always said, I'm someone who supports defensive capacities, but I'm against offensive. I'd say now what shifted for me is I'm not going to say there's not a distinction, because there is, but what I will say is the fact that I don't think our money should be going towards Israel right now because of what has happened and what is continuing to happen. Yeah. So I don't support any weapons, right? Whether it's defensive or offensive. I do think there is a distinction, but to me it's almost irrelevant. Israel has a lot of money. They can do their own thing. And like for me, it's like we have to use every lever that we have. Because it's getting worse, Now it's even far beyond that. We were dragged into this war with Iran. We know that Bibi Netanyahu was in the situation with Trump and pushed us to do this. So it's getting worse and worse. And we really have to use the power that we have. So to answer it directly, I don't think we should be sending any weapons, whether it's defensive or offensive. Do I support countries shooting missiles out of the sky so, people aren't dying? Yeah, of course, yeah. But I don't think our money should be going towards that right now.
Yeah, like that's their business, not necessarily. Like, we shouldn't be paying for it.
Yeah, because what it does, part of what happens is when we send resources, it's the same thing with Saudi Arabia. When we send weapons to a country and they're engaged in human rights abuses, what we're saying is that's okay.
Yeah.
And not just that's okay, like we're complicit.
Yeah.
And so that's really the thing for me.
100. And I think, it's created so much. I feel like it's created a lot of distrust too, like in, with like the Democratic Party, with like progressive spaces, like, and I think at the end of the day, like we need to try to all come together to fight the challenges that come approach us. Like, I know a lot of people like, I feel like with them, like they like to talk online, like, oh, like the young Latino male voter is voting away from the Democratic Party. I'm like, bro, that's my cousin. That's my cousin who didn't vote because he's like, I didn't support either what they did in Israel. And so that's good to know that, like, you've kind of, there's like a distinction now, that there's clarity on like where you stand now. And I appreciate your answers, Maxwell. I know that's like a tricky subject. I know there's a lot of misconceptions. I know there's like a lot of like, I guess like drama. I think even, when I was a campaign fellow too, there was conversations about like, that issue. And I think is basically, I feel very happy that things have come a long way. Things have changed. And I hope that other people can understand the nuance of the conversation too.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, for Maxwell, how are you doing today?
Good.
Awesome. I have a few questions I prepared from yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is one of my concerns about... Recently, there's been these events called teen takeovers around the country, and I know there was one last month at the Icon Park, which I was there, but I wasn't aware it was happening since I was on an anniversary date with my partner inside the restaurant. And I know there's been like a very punitive approach from many people, but also there's also like approach for more reformative at this root cause. Do you think how much of this is really an issue about public safety, and how much is this an issue about young people not having affordable nearby and welcoming third spaces to go to in the first place?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. I mean, I think the third spaces are really important. I don't know if you know this, but when I was a young person, I was not good. Okay, like I got in trouble a lot. I was suspended a lot. I got in a lot of trouble, and having that experience, I would also tell you that I had problems with redirecting my energy, and what I needed was a lot of love, and really it was band and a lot of the things I got involved in that helped me redirect my energy. But I also needed some tough love, to be honest, and I do believe in that. And so I'm not saying that tough love is someone sitting in jail. You know what I mean? There's different forms of that. But I think that when you take more of a strategic approach to these kind of things, like I've seen that like a lot of cities are so we should hit some of the kids with RICO charges and shit like that, you know. And the reason they've said that is because I guess they stream a lot of it and then they make money off of the ads, and so they're saying, I don't know. I don't think that's really necessary for like teenagers. I think what you find is that if you're able to identify the people organizing them and have, whether it's teachers or violence interrupters or like people in the community who don't want like a teen takeover of a local restaurant, but also don't want the kid to be like have their life ruined and put in jail, that you can oftentimes intervene. I mean, we all know how organizing works. People don't just show up to stuff. There are people who put stuff together. Right. And oftentimes you're able to identify those people and have conversations with them about it and stop it from happening or redirect it to like some other space or whatever it is. Right. So yeah, I hope that's kind of clear. I do want, like, I don't think building some extra spaces will stop it completely. And I think like to a lot of like people who live in these communities, that would ring a little hollow to them. They'd be like, dude, they fucked up my shit, dude. Like, and like I get that, and I want to like I empathize with that, but I don't think like sending kids to jail is really gonna fix the problem. Actually, in many ways, I think it makes it worse. So I think it's a combination. But for me, the tough love is less about, it's not about punitive punishment, but more about how do we intervene? How do we like not be lazy about a situation and just send a bunch of cops out there and arrest a bunch of people, but how do we figure out who's organizing them and like have a conversation with them and help redirect and point to other resources and different things like that. And a lot of times that's how you do it. Like that's how violence interrupters work, right? You know, after when they hear that a shooting is going to happen, they identify who's most likely to be shot and who's most likely to shoot somebody, and they literally intervene and have conversations, and that's how you end a lot of gun violence. So that's where I would start.
Yeah. And I know a few days ago, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani made a post saying, young people are always told what not to do, but what should you do? And he shared like places like free like libraries, do like free activities and other public third spaces. And what policies, federal or local, do you think?
Just by the way, all those posters are AI posters.
Oh yeah.
So I'm saying.
Yeah. Do you think what policies, federal or local, do you think could help communities create better outlets for teens before things escalate?
I mean, like funding our public schools a lot more, because there's just a lot more after school activities, and not like, come to after school math tutoring. Okay, well, a lot of people aren't going to be excited about that, right? But I mean, that's important. We should have it. But like, I just remember, at least for me, I've seen that any kind of after school activities, whether it's student run or teacher run and stuff like that, has really kind of evaporated. And a big reason why is, number one, our teachers don't live close to the schools anymore, so they're going home after, right? They have like an hour commute, a 90-minute commute, so there's no sponsors. The other thing is like these schools don't have any resources or any money, and so I think that's a really big one that like really impacts us. But any kind of grant programs where the government can give local governments resources to build things, whether it's community centers. I mean, I'm in the community centers a lot, and I see a lot of older people. I see a lot of young people playing basketball or hanging out or doing whatever it is, whether it's at the Smith Center or whether it's at Grand Avenue or whatever, right? I see a bunch of people doing the pottery classes. Like, the more we can think about cool things that I think people would want to be involved in, the better. I think the federal government should be helping to fund a lot of them.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're going to shift back to transportation. One of my other questions is, what is the biggest obstacle you see between where the STAR plan is now and actually getting shovels in the ground?
I mean, the biggest thing, right, is, and you guys know this, is just getting that, majority vote on the commission, right? And I think that, I mean, look, I think from an advocacy standpoint, it is the best time to impact a politician is during their campaign, right? That's when they're building their coalitions, their constituencies, their partners, and all that. After they're elected, it's still possible, but 95% of the time you won't be successful.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to say people shouldn't advocate current politics. You should. But a lot of times that advocacy is either pressure to move them or pressure to move other people around them. Exactly. And the good news is there's a lot of campaigns going on right now because everything is up, right, on the county commission, which means the question is like, how do we utilize our collective power, elected officials, organizations, activists, organizers, to get people to sign on to it? Is there a STAR plan pledge, right? Or and like, And if you want our support, which by the way comes with us knocking doors for you, us making videos with you, we're gonna get you more connected with the youth vote, people who follow us, who care about us, who are gonna go out for you. We need to make sure you're for this. And like that's a really good opportunity to do it, and we need everyone to do it. Like you guys know, I play a lot in the local elections. And I think it's really important. We got really involved in Mira's race.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of money. I think we spent like $20,000 or something in it. But and we got close. Not close enough, but we got close. And I don't think it would have been anywhere near as close if it wasn't for the whole coalition coming together. And I know it was a loss, but I see it as a really a little bit of a victory because let me not even use the word. I see it as a lesson learned because I think the next time we can win. Right, in other races. So, yeah.
And one of my other questions, so let me pull it up. Sorry. I heard a little bit about the Faster Buses, Better Futures Act bill.
Yes.
How does the grant program in your bill interact with something like the STAR plan?
So, the STAR plan would be a big part of it because what they have to do is provide generally what they want to do. And then they use the federal money to go into re-networking the system. So the STAR plan would be a part of that. And usually municipalities will hire some sort of transit consultant or something to create the plan. And so in a perfect world, you have links giving the STAR plan to whoever's going to re-network the bus lines to work that into it, right? And series of community meetings and a board with, some Sunrise members on it and some other people on it and people from different parts of the community. So, but for us, it would be mainly we're giving them the resources to pay for the plan to be made. And we want them to redo it like every 20 years. Yeah. Because things change. Like a lot of our routes are based off of the way the city was 30 or 40 years ago. Okay, well, the city's a lot different now.
Yeah, literally.
That's part of the problem.
And another thing I've been looking into more and more recently is Vision 2050 and the Orange Code. And I know it's been like roadblocked by SB 180 currently. And
right now, if we might get the 2050 without Vision 2050 passing.
Oh yeah, true.
So Vision 2050 and the Orange Code are pushing our county towards denser, more walkable development, but zoning reform only works if transit actually follows. What would your read be on whether the county and federal priorities are aligned right now?
I'm sorry, what would my what?
What's your read on whether the county and federal priorities are actually aligned?
The federal priorities aren't in a good place right now. I mean, I think the state, look, with the big housing bill the state did, I think there was some good stuff. I think there was obviously the preemption of rent stabilization and all that is horrible. I think some good things came out of it too. But the federal government doesn't really have a plan right now in terms of housing or transportation or anything like that. I mean, every once in a while, Trump will come out and say one good thing. Like he came out and said, we should ban Wall Street from buying up homes. And we were like, okay, let's do it. Let's go, Trump. Let's go. And it's not happening, right? And so my hope is that Democrats in the majority can actually pass a comprehensive housing package. And I think part of it has to be insane amounts of money dedicated to building millions of homes that can go to counties and go to cities, but also incentivize them to rezone, right? Whether it's getting rid of parking minimums or making sure that we're getting rid of exclusionary zoning and different things like that to build more homes. But I do believe we need to build more homes. And I do believe we do have a lot of duplicative measures in our permitting and different things like that keep that from happening. But the story doesn't end there. A lot of people think it ends there. We also need, Florida has the worst tenant protections in the country. And it comes at our expense because it makes it so that way as a consumer in the marketplace, it's harder to buy a home. I mean, not harder. It's impossible to buy a home. And then it's much harder to rent. So I do think we need federal protections for renters and level the playing field for people to buy as well. I do think, the housing needs to be built near transit. I do think it needs to be reversed though. So I don't think we shouldn't look at it as building transit around housing, even though that's how we're going to have to do in a lot of places. But we really need to start with the transit infrastructure and then incentivize housing to be built around it. Because part of what happens is if you do it in that other way, it becomes way more expensive to build the transit because now we have to do it around where the houses are. And a lot of times it's not conducive to rail or it's not conducive to more roads and different things like that. And actually, there's a lot of cities that have built their line and have really good either waivers for fees or permitting fees and things like that to build around the existing infrastructure. And I think we really need to look at doing that as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, and we're hoping kind of the STAR plan can kind of lead to that, where it's like we're starting to build towards the transportation, so now let's build the housing and stuff like that. And I think something that, just real quick, something that came to mind with the federal government, I think, like, obviously, like, the private housing industry, like, they do need to build more housing, but I think it's kind of like, I think something, too, I think about is, like, public housing, federal housing, like, that role as well. And I know that in Congress, there's, like, this law, I know, let's say Ocasio talks about it, that there's this law that prevents any more, like, public housing from being built as well. And so I guess just kind of with that in mind, I guess, like, you also, I'm assuming you probably also see, like, public housing, private housing, all, like, working together.
Yeah, it all works together. It's like we really need it all. Now, the problem, you know, part of the issue on the public housing front is that HUD has, like, no money.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is we all know what, you know, when you think about Section 8 or you think about public housing, there's a caricature.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's low-key true. Like, you know, a lot of the public housing is not in a good condition. Now, a lot of that's changing, which is good, but we need more money. And Trump is saying we need to cut the HUD budget by 40%. You know, which is insane. So that means less vouchers, less public housing, less rental assistance. And the fact of the matter is, it is both cheaper and less challenging for us as a society to keep someone housed than help them once they become unhoused, right? That doesn't. We should help people who are homeless, but I'm saying it's cheaper to make sure you get like $100, $200 in rental assistance so you don't become homeless. Than it is to help you once you're on the streets or you're living in a hotel. And so, like, for people who are like, well, it's too much money. Dude, it's too much money to deal with the problem, like, right now. And if you wait another 10 or 20 years, there's going to be more people living in hotels, more people, like 10 people to a small apartment. Like, that is expensive. So either way, I think that the public housing is like a really big part of it, and we need it all, like, to solve the problem. We just need a lot of housing, a lot of affordable housing, literally, and we need it quickly. And I actually have 2 bills I'm working on. One, obviously the word developer has a negative taste in most people's mouths, but part of the issue is we don't have, like, small scrappy developers who can help us build affordable housing, and it's because it's hard because you don't have the money. And so I'm working on a bill called the Community Builders Act, which would essentially build a workforce development program for people who live in their community to learn how to develop housing. And then once they go through the program, they can actually get government funding to build affordable housing. So it helps them build a career to help us build housing, which I think is really much needed. So we're working on that. Then there's another bill I'm working on that's called the Home by 30 Act, which is to incentivize people to buy homes. You know?
Oh my God.
Which is important for working people. Like, your largest asset is usually a home. And in 40 years, if we continue on our current trends, like, working people, your largest asset will be, like, your phone. Okay? And, like,
which is insane.
And if that, more and more people don't own their phones anymore. So, and they're renting their phone, or everyone's on a payment plan, so no one really owns it. And, like, it's a problem. We have, like, an ownership crisis where they don't want any working people to own anything of value. And when you don't own anything of value, you are completely at the will of the corporations that own everything in your life, from the movies you watch, to the music you listen to the phone you use, to the car you drive, to the place you live in. And so real economic freedom for working people is owning a home or owning an apartment, right? I don't mean just single family, owning where you live.
Yeah.
And right now, the average age for a first-time home buyer is 41 years old. So I'm working on this bill called Home by 30, which would cut it by 11 years.
Excellent, nice.
So we'll keep you updated on it. We're still, like, we're in the planning phases.
Yeah, I know a lot of people would love that, because I'm looking to move apartments right now, and the housing market is insane. Like, I'm like I want to stay in Orange so bad, but I'm like, oh my God, like, I might have to go to Seminole or something, which would be unideal.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But nice. Any other questions, or you think we're all
I have one more question. I know I mentioned this earlier. I've been, like, pushing for a crosswalk to be added, more of an interim crosswalk near Valencia College East Campus since December, and I've been hitting walls locally constantly. What federal tools exist to pressure local governments to prioritize pedestrian safety on corridors like that?
So there are grants that local municipalities or their planning divisions or agencies go for that incentivize them to essentially build more crosswalks and stuff. Actually, I just got a really big one. It was like $1.something million for our local area called the Safe Streets. And Safe Streets has helped us add more crosswalks and make things safer. We're actually very low key. We're working right now pushing the city to do a whole new planning of mills.
Yes. Oh my God! Please.
Yeah, which we're excited about. They're already adding like a crosswalk, but we believe that there needs to be, and I'm committing to the city to bring back millions of dollars to redo it. Is we just need the curb extension. There's a lot that needs to happen on mills to make it safer. And the fact of the matter is that's where like all people are hanging right now at night, and it's very unsafe. And so we want to see more housing built there. We want to see more safety. But the problem is we need the housing, but a lot of times we don't build infrastructure and we build housing, and then everything sucks. So we want to see the infrastructure built to make mills safer.
Yes.
The problem is mills is technically what's considered an orphan highway, which means it's owned by the state, but the state really doesn't do much to it. And then the city can't. The city can't just decide, let's go fix mills, because it's a state-owned road. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen, which is a perfect job for a member of Congress. So we're going to be out there with the state and the city and some other people, I think next week or the week after, to be looking at what that plan can look like.
That's excellent. I think so many people would be excited about that because, literally walking on mills like riding on a tightrope where the car's right next to you.
It's scary, And what happens is like, yeah, and people want to live in these places too. But the fact is, like, if you want to live around there, it's just single family homes. They're like really expensive.
Yeah, more options. That's super exciting. No, I mean, thank you, Maxwell, for answering all our questions. Really appreciate it. For everybody listening, that's Congressman Maxwell Alejandro Frost for you.
Thank you.
Represent Orlando. Thanks, guys.